Hello, everybody. This is my first time actually hosting Brice onto my show today. And welcome to Spiritual Perspectives of Our Great Awakening. I'm so excited because we have Cindy coming onto the show today, and we are going to talk about Hathor. How are you guys doing today?
Good. I was saying before we started filming, this is now my second time filming from a bed. So if you see my camera wobbling about, it's because it's on a pillow. I'm still not in Atlanta, so we're just making do with what we have, but I'm super excited I got back in time to do this episode with you ladies.
Yeah. And how are you, Cindy?
I'm doing good. I'm here at the yoga studio. Taught a class earlier this morning, and I was reading up. I was preparing too. I love talking about Hathor, and was reading up a little bit before we got on today. So yay.
Yay. So I just started reading a little bit about Hathor in the Sophia Code book. I'm currently reading through that right now, and ever so slowly I'm reading through it during my busy work schedule and everything. But I really wanted to start covering more of like the goddesses and everything like that, because they're so twisted, the way that the powers that be have portrayed them. And so I think it's important that we understand just what these ascended masters did, their importance, a little bit of their background and everything. So the audience understands that, there's a bigger picture in all of this. So with that said, Cindy, I will let you take the wheel on Hathor.
Oh my gosh. Well, I also, I have the book, the Sophia Code. I actually have it here with me as well. And I love the way that she talks about Hathor in this book. In my experience in working with Hathor, the first time I really worked with her, I felt like she just came in and rearranged my whole entire. I feel that the part of her essence or her magic, her mastery, it goes through many realms, but for us as humans, it's learning how to master our human body and to awaken it, not just everything that the human body entails. I mean, our human body is nothing but pure energy. And in the Sophia Code, Hathor talks about how we're made up of electrons, and Brice, I talked about that. I think we had that conversation before on your channel. And understanding that our body is this quantum thing, and how powerful it is, how powerful our body is, how powerful our voice is. And when, like I said, when I worked with Hathor, I think it was last fall. I mean, I really felt like it was a really intense experience, though. It was right after I had gotten sick with, I don't know how y'all COVID.
It's a beer flu.
The beer bug. Yeah.
And I had gone through, my body had gone through like this major fever and this major cleanse. And when I had that, I had a fever, and I had started my period at the same time. So I was in this major, I don't know what you call it, just detox mode. And I kept seeing also just a lot of the flower of life, the sacred geometry on the flower of life.
Mm-hmm.
That kept coming in a lot too. And again, it just felt like this very intense alchemical kind of experience through my body. But after that, it lasted. And then there's a whole mental rearranging, I think, that happened as well with my mind. I mean, I went through this, it almost felt like a mini dark night. Like there was just emotional things that were coming up that I thought that I had dealt with. You know how that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think that you deal with something, and then it comes up so it was just this full spiraling, spiraling inward. But then eventually, a couple of weeks, it subsided, it passed. And on the other side of that, I had so much energy, so much momentum, so much motivation, and new information kept coming in through that. Anyways, I share that because that's what happened to me. when working with Hathor. I mean, I really did feel like I was rearranged, and I feel that that's largely part of what she does, is that she helps us to cleanse our body, our minds, our throat, our hearts, our energetic system, so that we can be the clearest vessel as possible for our highest self. But learning the mastery over our bodies too, like true mastery over our bodies as sovereign beings, as manifestors, as co-creators, and just the whole process of understanding all the bits and details and the power that it resides within our body, activating it to its fullest potential so that we can live our best life.
Can we talk about the virus thing for a minute? Because this is something, Stephanie, I've spoken about, and this is something I cannot reiterate enough. Because here in the Western world, especially as of the last couple of years, I think we forget the potency of viruses. They're not a bad thing. And in fact, in the East, they're necessary. It's the burning away of the old samskara, of the old patterning. And you talked about that, like, it's when you're able to see that. I mean, of course, it sucks when you're going through that. I mean, hello, who likes to be hanging their head over a toilet vomiting? Like, it's not fun, but there's a spiritual process that is happening. We've talked about this, Stephanie, when you have these pathways throughout your physical body that are energetic. The energetic body is feeding that physical body, and that's where that bondage is happening through your own shit, basically, your own mental bondage. And when you start to break down those patternings, especially old ones that have been around, you might have inherited them from your ancestors, who knows? It takes like a fire, it takes a virus, it takes something to come in to, like, just, we have a joke what Guruji used to say, like, oh, new body is making, but what he didn't tell you is the old body has to break first before the new one can make. And that's the same thing with energetic patternings, is these old patterns have to burn up. And sometimes that results in a virus, that results in a fever. It's the same thing when you're on your period. It's that deep, and the fact that it happened all together with you, Cindy. Ugh. God has a sense of humor with that one, right?
That was rough.
I want to add to that too, Brice. Oh, sorry, sorry. Go ahead, Cindy.
No, I was just responding to that. I mean, that was like, what the?
Coming out of every hole, right? Like literally every.
Oh my God. And it's interesting you bring this up too, because I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on my channel or yours, Brice, but back in I would say middle of 2020, I hadn't fully awakened to this whole realization and reality of what exactly is going on. But I was going through a period of time where I was like little by little, and I remember I'd wake up really, really, really early in the morning, because generally most people, if you're normal to some extent, you have a full bladder when you wake up. You gotta relieve yourself, and not to get gross here, but I would like break out in a wicked fever that lasted maybe 5 minutes. And I would get so weak that I'd fall on the ground. And I was getting concerned. It went away. But now looking back at it and knowing what I know now, I'm realizing that my body was upgrading, and it was allowing some old stuff to be released, and then the new to come on in now that I know better. And so the other thing that would happen is the ringing in the ears would happen, and then I'd break out in a fever again. And I mean, it only lasted 5 to 10 minutes. It was the weirdest thing, and I did not understand it at the time, because coming from the Western medical world that I was in, to a regular doctor, that could be like a heart condition, or you need to get this test done and that test done. And now that I know, especially thanks to Brice, you have taught me a lot about this stuff. I realized that it was releasing of the old so the new could come in. And then it was weird, because then I had a massive spiritual awakening after I went through the brunt of that, because it was happening almost every morning. So.
Yeah, I mean, our bodies are quite magnificent, and in the Magdalene teaches too, and even in the Hathor, because like Hathor, Isis, Magdalene, it's all the same lineage. but they talk about the body as the child, like your body is the Holy Grail. I mean, your body is the actual tower. You hold the bloodline of consciousness, of the highest consciousness. It's within your bloodline. And the mastery of our body, I mean, that is how all these high priestesses, the ascended masters, that's how they knew how to heal. And that's how they knew how to co-create, how they knew how to travel between timelines. They understood that their body was quantum and that they could coexist here and in another lifetime at the same time, or they could, energetically be at 2 or 3 different places at the same time. That comes from mastery of the body and the understanding what the full potential of our human body is. Now, most of us don't quite get to there, but that in essence, to me, the way I see it, is what an ascended master is.
Mhm.
They have this full awakening and knowing, of course, of their eternalness, of their soul, of their, all that, but also of how this instrument works. And they have full control of that instrument. And in yoga, too, I know through, a lot of the practices in the ancient yogis, they knew how to train their body to not breathe, but still be alive, to levitate, to do all these things, because it's part of the mastery is this. It's understanding what your full potential is, and just how powerful you are through the body, through your instruments, through your thinking, through the vibrational tone that you put out with your voice, with your words, with your resonance, that you are energetic and you're always putting out a resonance frequency. And through that frequency, you're a magnet, that you're attracting things to you. It's the full understanding of all those things.
Yeah, it's interesting. At the end of the second sutras, Patanjali says that you're learning how to master your senses. And through everything that I've experienced, and I'm still haven't mastered that yet, it's still a practice. But the more you really hone in on the subtle body too, the more you realize, you first start to acknowledge how much your senses are actually mastering you, and you're not mastering your senses. And so you learn how to then take that step. And how many people do we see that are afraid? They're afraid of sensation. They're afraid, but that's what these beautiful ancient practices are teaching you, is how to actually understand you are in full. I mean, Patanjali even says, like, future pain can be avoided. Future, if you learn how to, and I know the 3rd and 4th pada, they get into like the siddhis, what we call in yoga is siddhis. And I'm a bad lady for even talking about them, because we're not supposed to even talk about them. But if you read a lot of like Ram Dass's books, I think it's even in one of Bhagavan Dass's book, where they talk about Maharaji, their guru, they literally witnessed him making food multiply the way that Yahshua did in the Bible. He made apples multiply. There was one scene, I think it was Ram Dass, maybe it was Bhagavan Das, was driving in India, and Maharaji was in the passenger seat beside them, and they were having a chit chat, and they looked over and he was gone. And then a few minutes later, he was back again. He learned how to control, because the nature is, and we've talked about this, Stephanie, it's like in the Western world, we've been taught that our body is just our body. If you get cancer, if you get all this kind of stuff, it's just your body, you inherit it, whatever. Whereas when you get into the Eastern philosophy, you realize actually it's your energy.
Yeah.
That subtle part of you that is manifesting these things within yourself. And that's what you're learning to control, is that it's like a glove. It's like the hand in the glove is what's controlling the glove. The glove is just a glove. That energy is that hand.
I think too, we're so programmed to think, externally, like what we see is what we believe. And it goes far beyond that. And I wanted to bring up the whole, how Hathor could be in 2 worlds at once, because that was something I was very interested in actually asking you, Cindy. Was what I was reading about was she had this lifetime on Earth, but she also was simultaneously in Syria, or the Syrian planet. Also I don't know if she went back and forth or she was simultaneously living two different lifetimes, two different timelines together. But that impressed me. And I mean, we've been so lied to that these things are literally and they're possible. And I think these are things we're going to probably start learning about in the future and everything like that. But I don't know if you know more about that, where she was in between Earth and the Syrian planet.
Well, the way I understand it in the book is she did have a human experience, and that it was back along like before Atlantis, before Lemurian time, and it was during one of the golden ages where the people that were on this planet had more of an understanding of things that we're not quite as awakened to yet. But, I think that we're awakening to. And a lot of that information was just simply more available.
Yeah.
And because in her human experience, she had an understanding of the fact that we're quantum beings through the electron. If you go through the Sophia code, one of her activations is she activates all the electrons within your body. And electrons are quantum particles that travel almost at the speed of light. I actually researched this before for a video that I did. Our electrons don't quite travel at the speed of light, but they almost travel at the speed of light. If our electrons traveled at the speed of light, we wouldn't be in form. But they come really close to that. And then we have trillions and trillions and trillions of them within the body. And the way that Hathor explains it in the book is that that's the first vehicle to our soul. Like our higher self extends through every single electron in our body. And if we could just like awaken and remember that, that is what gives us the capacity to understand ourselves more as these quantum beings through the physical body, through the energetic body, then also through our resonance through our voice, through actual vibration and sound, and through just like our heart, our heart chakra. And when she was on Earth, that was what she was known for. She was known for that. That was her highest teaching. And and eventually, yes, and that's what also gave her the capacity to exist within different timelines.
That's amazing.
Like herself here, herself there. She was it was Isis who was more of the oracle of the earth. But anyway, she had that potential. And what was interesting to it in this book is Mother Mary is also a teacher of your voice, and that Mother Mary also understood Hathor, like these specific teachings of Hathor, about our bodies, about truly awakening the voice, and to let our voice be a representation of our higher self, and that this is one of, so you got your collarbone and this space right here, and if you tone to it, if you hum to it, you can feel a vibration that's coming through, and that's like a gateway to, massive creation. And so Hathor knew this. She knew the intimate details of all of this and passed on that knowledge in her while she was on Earth. And then and how it translates over into her being the Egyptian goddess the way we know her. She would come in with kind of these horns, and they would see her like the horns and this, she had like a disc in the horns, and she would manifest through this. She was known like as the cow goddess. but that was also her shape-shifting. Like Isis was a shapeshifter as well, and you would see her with her feathers. And, you know, Hathor was a shapeshifter, and they would capture her like the cow goddess. But also the goddess of fertility, of abundance, of all these things as well. That's how it passed on through the, you know, just the more traditional Egyptian line.
Now, Hathor was also a major influence in Isis, correct? Like she taught Isis a lot of what Isis knew. Is that accurate?
That's the way I understand it. Yeah, that Hathor was in essence first. And then Isis learned the teachings of Hathor. And in the Egyptian line, they got enmeshed. Like Hathor and Isis kind of became one. Even though they were two separate, you know, a lot of their stuff got enmeshed. As like sometimes you will see Isis with the same disc. Like Isis has a disc, Hathor has a disc, because their teachings actually got enmeshed with one another.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
You know, it's interesting. They want us to think that shape shifting is something that's bad. You know,
I'm glad you're bringing this up.
bad, the lizard people do it, all that kind of stuff. But we all have that ability. We
Yes.
all have the, now granted, if I've said it on my channel before, like if I was going to shape shift anything, it would be for me to constantly have a 6-pack without having to exercise. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's, we all have that ability. And if you think about it, like the rate in which like we do change. You can tell when someone's upset. Your shape shifts by the energy of being upset, by being angry. You already see that happening. And our body is constantly in a state of evolving and changing. That's why it's nature. It's always going to change because it has an expiration date. But I want to get back to being the idea of being in two places at once. Now, this is something that I knew about long before the Great Awakening started, because this is a topic of conversation that comes up a lot with the Law of One, with the Cassiopeans. And I myself have been told by many people that I am personally existing on this earth plane and in the galactics. I've been told that by multiple, that a part of myself is also in the galactics right now, existing in that higher plane of existence. You know, but me and my lower self, I'm like, I don't know, you know, what's she doing up there? I don't know. What does her outfit look like? I don't know, you know, but
I hope it's pretty.
but that is something that I have, especially for what they say for, I don't want to say more evolved souls, because I don't think that's necessarily the case, but more of souls that are maybe used to being in a place where they've been more of like a warrior type, in the sense of like they have a job to do. And so a fractal of that soul will decide to come down to the earth plane, while another fractal will stay up in, you know, another realm and be doing something else. And sometimes we know with the concept of twin flames that a soul can split into two bodies as well. But yet in the quantum, those twins are always together. The souls they're never apart from each other. And so it's this mind-blowing concept for us mere mortal humans that are dealing with a mere mortal brain. You know, the brain, we talk about this in yoga a lot. The brain is just a muscle. It's just an organ, like the heart. It has a job to do in your survival. But you also have your consciousness and your psyche. And all these things together make up your own thought process. But when we start to separate the way we analytically look at something, you can actually feel the difference, where the brain can't possibly understand this, because the brain recognizes patterns. The brain is looking to survive. The brain is trying to figure out what's going to keep you on this earth plane alive. Whereas the consciousness, though, if you shift it, your consciousness can kind of understand it, you know, can kind of go, oh yeah, that resonates. Like, yeah, that actually resonates. The first time somebody said that to me, I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I don't understand it, but that kind of makes sense. There's something that resonates. And I think part of this Great Awakening is, you know, the brain, the analytical brain does have a purpose. It does have a very important purpose. You wouldn't be able to drive a car without it, you know, like you wouldn't be able to like feed yourself without it or survive. But to be able to kind of flip the awareness to more of that conscious state of understanding the quantum more, and that's something that we've kind of been robbed up to in this timeline, because my parents didn't talk to me about this. Like, we didn't grow
Yeah.
up in school learning about this. So,
That's part of the Great Awakening, is entering this Christ consciousness state where, it's not just understanding that we've been lied to our whole lives, but it's like there's these gifts and powers that have been completely hidden from us, in that we're going into a different state of consciousness. So I think going forward, we'll eventually start to remember these things if we had these abilities in a past life or whatnot. I don't know what your take is on that, you guys, but I'm thinking that we will start to remember things as we shift into the fourth density positive, but that fifth density consciousness, the Christ consciousness.
Well, a lot of us, and I've done it through my work, we have the capacity to access different parts of our lives, our past lives. Like,
Yeah.
I've done past life regressions, past life regression myself, past life regressions with people, where you begin to access memories of when you existed within within another lifetime or another timeline. And that's pretty well known. Like, you can access your past life. And what's really fascinating is this is a personal practice too that I often share. I've done it myself, but I'll share it with some students or some clients, is to access your future self. Especially because your future self has different potentials too, based off of the decisions that you're making right now will decide which part of your future self actually activates and this and that. But if you're in the process of really manifesting or creating or just really wanting to create the life that you want to create, well, there's a timeline for that. Like, you can transport yourself to your future self that has all the things, and to ask that future self to come in and to communicate with your present self and give you the information that it needs to get you there. So, that's a practice that you can use instead of always going in the past. Now, sometimes we have to unravel our past, to unravel it in our bodies, to disentangle it so that we're not living or we're not frozen in the past. But then you can also connect to your future self and connect with that timeline where in that future where you've already done the thing. You've already got the thing. You've already created the thing, and then ask that future self to come in and to give you the roadmap as to how to get there.
Now that would require a lot of shadow work. I'm assuming, wouldn't it?
Well, I was about to say,
Shadow work comes in for the disentangling pieces of your past.
yes,
That's usually the shadow work is a lot of the inner child stuff, a lot of subconscious where we're fragmented and we're still caught in our trauma drama, all that stuff. Usually your shadow takes you to your past to free you from that, for your body. Because all that stuff gets stuck in your body, and that's why I think that's also part of the process of mastering our bodies. We got to shed it from where it's traumatized or frozen in the past. There's a book out there. Honestly, I haven't read the book because I feel like I would read the book and go, yes, correct. Your body holds the score.
Yeah, I've read it.
What is this book again?
Okay.
It's intense. It is really your body keeps the score. It is intense.
Is that something somebody could purchase on Amazon or something?
It's really intense. It gets into how your body holds on to things, but it's interesting. So Dr. Brice, most people know who he is who are in the spiritual world. He was one of the first big hypnotherapists, doctors who accidentally stumbled upon learning how to bring people into past life regression. He's written, his first book, I think, was called Many Minds, Many Masters. I can't remember the exact, I read his first book when I was in college. And at that point, reincarnation was something my grandmother kind of briefly spoke to me about, like whispered, because we didn't want our Christian family to hear we were talking about that. She was great. I've told people she used to hide books about reincarnation under the bed for my grandfather. But and so I started reading this book in college, and I was like, this is so fascinating. And he's written so many books on the subject. He's talked about all his different clients, and he can study karmically patterns in people and how they've kind of translated through each life. And again, your karma, I've said this over and over and over again for the Westerners in the back of the room who don't understand what karma is. All karma is action and reaction. It's your work. That's all it is. That's all it is. And there was one book, though, where he was starting to take people into their future lives. He was starting to do this with his clients. And a lot of the times, and one client I remember he spoke about in particular, is there were 2 future lines simultaneously available to that person. And it all depended on whether the person in this particular life did their shadow work or not. If they didn't work through their karma in this life, they were going to have to take this path. If they did the work, then this path would open up. One path, and I'll never forget, the next life, I remember it was this woman was going to now be a man living in Hawaii in a beautiful home, was going to have a very peaceful life. But the other possibility was a really hard life for her. And then, but it all depended on what she did now in the here and now with her own karma. And so that shadow work is, you can't, and our souls are eternal. So God doesn't care how long it takes. Like, you can repeat the second grade as many times as you want to, because you're not dying anyway. So universe is like, if you got to do a hard life again, just to work through this crap, we'll just keep giving you that hard life. But it's up to you what you're willing to face in this life. And that's going to determine the trajectory of which path is simultaneously available to you. Yep. Now, if we talk about the multiverse, there could be 2 different lives you're living in this life, where in one instance you do the work, in one instance you don't, and so your soul then takes 2 separate journeys. That gets into a whole other discussion of the multiverse and the existence of you living even on the same plane in different existences. But it's all for you to learn. For this, what is it? Alan Watts says it's like the eyeball trying to see itself. It's like the soul really trying to understand itself, which it's almost, as David Greig used to say, like almost like the unsolvable riddle, because it's so complex, and for our little mortal lives, it's just,
it's hard to wrap itself around all those ideas. And that's why often through sessions or, clearing sessions that I do, you clear through all dimensions, all realities, all timelines, through all space-time dimensions and reality, because they're, and not only that, but the way then how that just continues to roll over into how it's going to impact your unborn children. Because it goes out, it has a rippling effect that goes out beyond simply you. It ripples out to your future line. Your and all of them who come after you. So it's just, it's mind-blowing when you think about how.
We were talking about this yesterday, Stephanie, we were talking about about men having to grow up and be dads, and you said, they have 9 months to prepare. I'm like, no. The minute that sperm hits that egg, that sperm is holding a vibrational frequency. That man needs to get his shit together before, so that sperm's vibration when it hit, and the woman for the egg too. I mean, every kid's going to have some type of parent issue like that. That's just being human, but you want to try to, but it's true. Cause think about how much crap we're holding on to from our ancestors. And we don't even understand that it comes from some ancestor that lived 500 years ago. That's just passed, trickled down through energetic line.
It really does.
So
mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing.
Realities, future selves, past selves, unborn children. I mean, we ripple in so many different directions, for sure.
No pressure, people, no pressure.
It's a lot to take in. It really is. And especially I just came out of the Christian church. So this is
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like learning about all this stuff. And I mean, it's quite liberating at the same time. I'm glad I'm out of that world, because that is a very harsh world to be a part of. Um, and you lose your sense of self when you are in that world, because they don't want you to know your powers and everything. But um, learning about all these ascended masters and everything, it's been a subject of interest with me, especially the lineage of Isis and all of that. And so that's why I wanted to bring in this whole Hathor video, because I know they're very interconnected in a lot of the stuff that they did, and the teachings and all that kind of stuff. So it was very, very fascinating for me. And I'm very fascinated with the whole thing that Hathor was simultaneously living in two different worlds. I think that's mind blowing right there. But apparently, we still have those abilities to do that.
You might be too, Stephanie, at this, and Cindy might be as well, that your soul is living in two different worlds.
I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked. At this point, nothing really shocks me. So
I always say, and we were texting today, I mean, in the West, we're just basically taught the soul. Like that's what we're spirit soul.
Yeah.
That's what we're taught, is that eternal. But then you get into the teachings of the East, and you've got, and for them, the soul, I typically say soul because I'm speaking mostly to Westerners. And so that's what Westerners understand, is that eternal part of us. But then you get to the East, and they believe that the soul isn't even the real eternal part of you, that you can have multiple souls within you from all your different lives you've lived. It's like a residue from all those. So you could be walking around with like 1,500 souls from all these lives you've lived in your one body, that the real essence of the eternal even gets down to Atman, something that's even deeper than the soul, this idea of Atman, which then connects to Brahman, which is one of, big in India, it's Brahma. Brahma is one of the tri-heads of the deity. So it gets so detailed into who we really are, the essence of who we really are. And one thing I love about the Isis and Hathor teaching is the role of women. Because I think most people know the name Isis over Osiris. And Osiris was her male consort, but people know Isis probably thanks to, McCain and his bandits of, we won't say much on that, guys, you know what we're talking about, but they like to dirty those names up. But people know Isis more than they know Osiris. The women in this time were respected as sovereign beings who actually were more than just a housewife with a pretty face that had babies. That there was such a huge shift from these powerful women that people went to for healing. Went to we've talked about this, Cindy, you've mentioned this a lot, about even with Magdalene and Joshua, she anointed him. You don't ask somebody to anoint you unless you view them as spiritually superior to you. And he had her anoint him. He asked Magdalene to do it. He didn't ask Peter or John or Larry down the street. Like, he asked Magdalene to do it with her alabaster jar. And so
and it's funny too that when you begin to connect and study with these ascended masters, the way that they come through you. I mean, they will really be with you. I shared recently, is on the Instagram, because I'm running right now the ascension course where we're actually working with the female ascended masters. And I was sharing how when I, come up with a date for the programs that I run, I come up with a date purely because it fits on my schedule well. That's it. There's no other motivation. I was like, I look at my schedule and I say, okay, we're going to do this date, this date, this date, this, right? And then as we know, we just went through Holy Week. And this past Saturday, we had one of the classes scheduled for Ascension. And of course, it was Mother Mary Magdalene who we had scheduled. And it happened to fall on the full moon in Libra, which, Libra is ruled by Venus. And I didn't plan that. Well, some part of my consciousness planned that, but I didn't consciously plan that. But the way that these teachings and these teachers and these ascended masters will just come in and will show up in your life this way, giving you the synchronicities and the affirmations that yes, we are here with you. And I think that that's one of the big things that we can take away from this as well, is that they are here with you and that they will work with you and they will show up in your lives in very meaningful, transformational ways that, you know, truly make a difference. That they don't only exist in theory. Because, you know, when we talk about this like this, you know, we talk about the theory, the philosophy, but they don't only exist in the realm of theory, that they exist in the realm of showing up for you in your real life and bringing the messages home and truly embodying them. And that is so true with all of these, with Hathor, and they just like sneak in and they give you all these little divine winks through their synchronicity, saying, yes, you know, we're here. Again, we don't just exist here in the world of talking about us, but we will really come through you. And the more you study with them, the more you take in, the more you become initiated, the more you actually become the chalice yourself, the vessel, the channel, and your words are their words. You become one. It's like their words are your words. It's like you've opened yourself up to their wisdom, their knowledge, and everything that they have to share.
And you said one time, Cindy, and I loved it, that they don't want to be worshipped. You know, they don't want to be. It's almost like they're there to show you that you are also an ascended master.
Yeah.
Also, you can also do this.
They want to be embodied through you. It's like they want to be embodied and to like really be here on this earth plane, showing up to anybody who's open and willing to do it. And it's that, I mean, you have to be open and willing. You have to be willing to do the work. Because with any kind of initiation, no matter what study you're going in, it's going to require you to do your work. So the willingness to do your work and to then become the vessel. You have to become the chalice and to become the embodiment. That's what they want. They want you to be an embodiment of what they've been, you know, of their wisdom, of their teaching.
Yeah. Somebody asked me, and I can't remember if it was in an email or if it was in a comment. Somebody asked me, what does one have to do to be initiated into the priesthood of Isis or this Hathor or whatever it's called now? You know, what does one have to do to become that?
It's good to find someone who's already gone through it. So an initiator, you know, someone who's spent years with it, and it'll just work better. You can totally go through, and you know, I say it frequently, you can totally go through these processes on your own. I mean, you really can. You have the capacity to do that, but to have someone that helps you through it, it's much better for when the shit hits the fan and you have someone that you can go to, because it will eventually, like the unraveling of the old will happen.
Yep.
And when that happens, you have someone who can just be or have something or someone, a container to help you get through like those moments, and to just help to, I don't know, to guide you along and to act as a catalyst for it instead of trying to do everything on your own. You can totally do things by yourself, but it's better to do things not by yourself.
Well, sometimes the teacher will trigger the karma to come up faster. I mean, that's my friend Hathor, who is a certified Ashtanga teacher, one of the like 17 women in the world who are certified because it's so hard. And she said that before, like, your karma is laid out for you in this life already. But when you pick a practice like Ashtanga or a spiritual practice, an intense old practice that runs by a very ancient set of rules, you're actually asking to have your karma sped up. You're asking for it to be sped up.
All this stuff I was telling this to somebody, I mean, maybe it was with you, Brice, All we're doing is saving you time, so that you don't have to go through your 4 or 5 or 6 lifetimes. Like you said, God really doesn't care, but you might care because you might be tired of feeling shitty or feeling stuck or feeling like you don't know where you're going, and you want to enhance your life now, in this lifetime. And so your teachers, they just act as catalysts to save you time. That's all we do. All we do is save you time.
Yeah, it's a controlled demolition. I mean, I was having a conversation with that at your school, Cindy, with a student of ours, saying this is a controlled demolition when you're in especially with the yoga Ashtanga practice, the practice itself, and a lot of old spiritual practices are designed to piss you off. They're designed to trigger you. They're designed for a controlled demolition of your false sense of self to get to the root of who you are. You gotta take down the fake plaster before you can actually view the gold underneath. And that's not fun. That's the one thing I'm trying, because I think sometimes here in the West, more so in the East, we're really confused about that. I find a lot of people think when they take on a spiritual path that it's going to be just Enya music and lavender scents. You're just going to be farting lavender. I don't know. It's just going to be, and I'm like, no,
Rainbows.
that's not happened once. It's maybe
That's
next life. Like, this is
farting lavender. I was highly impressed.
I know. If that happened, I'd be very impressed too. I'm like, no, it is one of the most painful things you will ever go through. And that's when people, I find it myself anyway with my students, when the stuff really starts to come up, when the shit hits the fan, that's when people run and they don't want to do it anymore. And they go back to their old habits because it's too hard. And it's not their, it's not their expectation of what they held in their mind about what a spiritual journey was going to look like. And it becomes worth it when you start to work through that stuff, because you learn so much about yourself and you find out who your sense of self is. But it's and those teachers are not going to coddle you. They're not going to
will help you through that too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where it's good to have teachers, is when you get to that point where you're like, oh my gosh, I want to stop, but you have a space and you have like a container, to do the work. It's you're more likely to go through it and to show up and to process and to get to the other side of it. Where if you're just doing it by yourself, you might not be as motivated, or you might not keep the momentum to keep going.
I agree with that.
Teachers, initiators, your priestesses, all this, that's where that's just what we do is we're holding the space for that, for you to do it. And because it's not like we're here figuring it out for you.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're still figuring it out for yourself. Like we can provide you with the guidance. We can provide you with maybe some of the initial energetic initiations and, be there, but you still have to, you still have to go through it yourself. You have to do the work, and that's basically what we do, is we just hold the space for you to be able to do it.
Holding accountability.
And people ask me that a lot, especially in the Mysore room, which is not at Cindy's school. I just teach a lead class, but in the Mysore room for traditional Ashtanga, there's constantly somebody on their mat crying. There's constantly somebody having a breakdown. And it's not because, the practice is hard, but that's nothing compared to what it's pulling up in that person. And every single teacher I've worked with, and the way I handle it too in the Mysore room, is when somebody's having a breakdown on their mat, I don't draw attention to them. I just let them have their space. And once they get themselves together, they resume their practice again. And then I continue helping them through their practice. Most teachers will not draw attention to it. I remember one time I was up in Philadelphia practicing, and there was a girl beside me who every day she was just struggling through this third series transition, which if y'all, third series is like Cirque du Soleil anyway. But, she was really, you could tell it was really triggering her. And you would see her you would hear her dropping F-bombs. That's most of my Mysore rooms. You hear the F-bomb all the time. It's no big deal. Because people are triggered and they're working through stuff. And then one day like 4 days into my time there, she just like sat on her mat and just started sobbing, just sobbing. And we all just continued practicing, and David continued walking around the room. And then once she got her act together and took that deep breath, David came and sat on the mat beside her and just said, "Y'all good now?" And she said, "Yep." He was like, "All right, let's get back up and keep going." And that's all it took, you know? And so
I cried on my mat this morning.
Exactly. You're not there to help solve their problems like you solve it yourself,
Yeah.
but we might give a little extra something, again, to hold the space. If you have questions, answering the questions, that
Yeah.
kind of a thing. But, you know, we're not here to fix you or
Yeah.
to do anything like that. We're just here simply to, you know, again, hold the container, be the container.
and
Only, go ahead.
And
Brice.
yes,
I was saying, it's a safe space. It's a safe space to fall apart. It's a safe space, and that's because it's expected. And sometimes people feel crazy when it starts to happen to them, but the teacher's there to go, actually, this is really normal.
This happened to me, Brice. I called you. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I just did this bar exercise and I can't stop crying. And
That's what
so
it is.
I've been learning this firsthand for the first time in my life. Like I used to be a crazy person with working out 2 hours a day for 6 days, 7 days a week when I was like really, really young, but in the gym. And I wasn't working any of my pelvic floor area, my hips, none of that, like solar plexus area. And now that I'm working that with the bar exercising, like this morning, I really lost it. And I actually had a lot of like flashbacks of my childhood, things that made me angry come up. And I didn't run away from it. I faced it head on, and I just remembered it. And I said, okay, well, and I allowed myself to cry it out and really faced it and everything, and understanding why that particular issue has created me to act maybe certain ways in my adult life, you know, why. And learning a lot from you, Brice, when it comes to this kind of stuff. I was able to productively face that and do that shadow work head on. But I felt so much better afterward. It was uncomfortable. I don't like crying. I talk about this all the time. I was always told a lot of times, don't cry, don't cry. So that's a programming I have to release now. And so, but you have to release it. You have to face it, and you can't run away from it, because it's going to just follow you and follow you and follow you.
I mean, it's just you. It's you that you're facing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's like people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to face something that I can't. It's you. It's a part of you. It's a you that was stuck or frozen, a child or something that felt hurt. And we fear that. We fear facing that, but it's you. You know, it's just you that you're facing, and our ego makes it so much bigger than that. Like, no, you can't go there, because, you know, we cultivate these protective mechanisms to keep us from going to those places because they caused trauma before. And those mechanisms of protection, they do a really great job of making you very afraid of looking at those things. But they're just you. They're little bit yous. They're like baby yous, little 2-3-year-old yous. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or 11-year-old yous. And that only, they just want to be heard and acknowledged and seen, you know? And it's through that process that we can regain and become a whole. Like those pieces that we have fragmented, we can bring them back into our souls. We don't feel, I mean, we can't ever be fragmented, but we do a good job of in our bodies, fragmenting pieces of ourselves so that we don't feel whole, you know. And that's what this does, is it brings all those pieces back to you, and you can bring that part of you back into your heart or into your solar plexus or into wherever you disassociated it from. But they're just your emotions. You know, they're simply your emotions, and they're you. That's what you're facing. But we make our protective mechanisms do a really good job of making us really afraid of facing those things.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's so beneficial to do that work. So beneficial.
And we like to
Yeah.
project. We like to, and as I say this, guys, I'm generalizing. If you are in a situation where you are being abused, please get out of it. But if we go back and look at, because I know I've been through that, Stephanie's been through that, we've all been through that situation. We want to project all of those issues onto the person who did it to us. But when you're really on the spiritual path, you go, wait a minute, I was doing that to myself. What
Yep.
part of me, we were talking about magnifying, attracting, what part of me wasn't healed? That was the best thing that happened to me in my life, is I had gone through one bad relationship, the next bad relationship, the next bad relationship with narcissists, to the point where I almost lost my life. It got so bad where I had to call 911. I got, I can't say it on YouTube, but this, and the dog I actually thought the dog pooped on the floor, and that's when I was dropped, and I reached for my phone and called 911. It was bad. But I had to get all the way to that point for me to go, why am I attracting this?
Yeah.
And that sent me into trauma therapy, and also to
Mhm.
India, where I took a lot of time alone, and I went through trauma therapy, and I know people feel funny about therapists. I had a great trauma therapist. She was very well educated in Eastern philosophy, and she, would walk you through things. And we did EMDR therapy to also relax the mind a little bit, but just being able to face that part of myself from my childhood that
Mhm.
wasn't healed. And if something
Mhm.
isn't healed, it's going to keep screaming out at you and attracting something to get your attention before you actually heal it.
Mhm.
And after that happened, after I went through that, I all of a sudden was able to date men that showed me actual love, because I started to love myself. I actually found
Mhm.
myself in healthy relationships that I'd never been in before. All of a sudden, look at that. All of a sudden you're in a healthy, and it's so it is beneficial. It's hard though. It really sucks, especially when you've gone through something like that and you're like, wait a minute, this is on me. Yeah, when I was a child, I didn't have a chance to, but now and that's what one thing my therapist said to me, you are responsible for that little girl. You are now responsible for her. And by not healing this, you're doing to her what you feel like your parents did to you. You're just picking up that role. And it's you facing yourself. It's all you.
Yep.
It's liberating when and then,
It is.
then you go through the idea of the soul contract, that you actually agreed for these things to happen so you would have the opportunity to learn and grow. And I know people get upset with that, but honestly, when you actually realize that you were the writer of that contract, that you were the one that said, I'm going to do this in this life. Whoa, that's powerful.
Yes.
That's
That's very liberating to understand that. And I always have said to that, how do I word this? I always say some of the greatest things that come to us in life come with the hardest work.
Yeah. Nothing good
You
is
know what I mean? No, nothing good is easy. And but look at it in a sense where when you do that hard work, you are going to feel like $1,000,000 compared to if you did nothing about it. You know what I mean? There's a sense of like, I don't want to say reward. I don't want to coming off like egotistical. But like it's like a humble pat on the back, like, okay, I did this. I'm proud of myself. And you gain this love for yourself that you couldn't if you didn't do anything about it. Does that make sense?
well, self-respect too.
Yeah.
It builds a confidence inside of you that, and which is where that empowerment is part of the actual feeling of empowerment, is
Mhm.
that is
Yes.
where you can say, here I am, I did this, and that confidence, empowerment, all those things, they reside right there at your solar center,
Mhm.
and it builds you up, but it builds you up from the inside out, from restoring all those misplaced pieces where we disassociated them or put them somewhere. You put the piece back, and it's like, you grow bigger, taller, stronger, for sure.
Yeah.
You learn, you said this, Stephanie, too. You learn, and that's the thing about the sense of self. You learn not to look for your sense of self outside of you. And
Yes.
that goes even beyond love. It's just understanding that you have a sense of self, of who you are, that's beyond what your favorite food is, what your favorite color is. It's something that's so sacred, that's yours. And once you find that sense of self and you're able to settle into that sense of self, you can be alone and be fine.
Mhm.
You're not looking for another person to fulfill you. You're not looking for another thing to fulfill you. I mean, Ram Dass even said this once, and I thought this was brilliant, that one day you don't even need the spiritual practices anymore because you found what you were looking for, and that's the beauty of it. And that goes beyond so much of what we even perceive about ourselves is resting in that sense of self. And I think a lot of times children do have a sense of self, but then through the haphazard obstacle of being human, things get knocked out of them, and all of a sudden we are a little fragmented and disassociated, and then we're adults running around with wounds from our childhood that we're just trying to cover up and mask, when actually it's never been gone in the first place. It was always there. We just have to go and find it again. And I think that like Hathor, Isis, all these ascended masters had to also work through this as well to get where they were, to have an understanding of the predicament of being human.
Restoring your chalice. You got to restore your chalice, and then it can hold the higher, it holds your higher consciousness better. Like you resonate with your higher consciousness better once you restore your chalice. And I think that's why, that's what Hathor, that's what I feel, at least in my part of it. I think different teachers might have different perspectives as to what their piece is in what they're offering and teaching. But the one that comes through most powerfully for me is restoring your power, restoring your body, restoring your humanity, doing your shadow work, doing all this stuff, doing your exercises, eating well. I mean, because all that contributes. So doing the bar, doing the yoga, making sure your muscles are supporting. I mean, go through the true, not just the energetics, but you got to go through the physiological. I mean, you need to go through understanding your nervous system, understanding, your bone structure, your muscle structure, how you can support that, your senses. I mean, taking it beyond just the energetics, but to the physical, because it all connects. And restoring your chalice. I mean, that's really what I feel like I do. That's what I help people with. That is what the way these masters come in through me is to offer that kind of those words and that kind of support, to help in that.
Yeah. When is your next Ascended Masters workshop, Cindy? Do you have dates for it yet?
No. Two more, probably in the fall.
Okay.
I'll do another one. The thing is, I have to figure out how to do that. We do so much hands-on. That one I haven't figured out how to put together virtually, because we also take field trips.
Yeah.
We go out and we go do different things, but yeah, I'm definitely a feeler. Like, I'm a knower, I'm a feeler. I like to touch people.
I don't know why I'm being called to ask this of you, Cindy, because in the Ashtanga world, teachers travel a lot to do workshops, and actually David Garrigues will probably be coming back in the fall, which is exciting. Yeah. And but would you ever, if there's somebody watching right now, Cindy, that owns a shala somewhere and wants you to come up and teach a weekend workshop or something on the Ascended Masters, would you be open to traveling to do that?
Yeah. And totally. I would totally be up for that. And I am also trying to get more on the virtual, I did I'm in the middle of doing the virtual training for the spirit release. So, and I do some other, with clients, I have clients from all over the place that I do virtually. But I think it's the training part, like really trying to get in and train people. That is where, and I know there's plenty of trainings virtually, but like I said,
hands-on is so important though. Hands-on, it's that energy, it's part of the parampara, so I totally get it. But if there's shala owners out there that are listening, Cindy's down to travel.
Thank you for putting that out there. We are over an hour at this point. Cindy, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and explaining what you know about Hathor. And then of course, Brice, you bring in your Ashtanga, knowledge and all of your Eastern philosophy knowledge. So I really appreciate it. And like, you guys make such a great team and collaborating and pulling together all that information. You guys are like rock stars. Over there, Brice, you're like, I know, I got this.
At your Java.
Me on my bed with my computer.
My bed with my computer, guys. And I got my lights. I got everything ready. I just did that, adult entertainment director. I'm just kidding. I would never do that. So.
But thank you guys so much for doing this, because I know that a lot of people actually I've had a lot of people asking me about Hathor specifically lately. I don't know, maybe it's Hathor season. So but thank you so much. And we'll have to definitely do this again when I come up with another subject of interest on a goddess.
Thank you so much for having me and for the invitation. I love it.
You're welcome. Of course, as always, Brice. Thank you so much.
I'll see you Sunday.
See you Sunday for Ashtanga Torture Day.
Bye.
All right, ladies. Bye.